हिंदी भाषा में एक कहावत है, सात समुंदर पार। भारत और अर्जेंटीना के बीच का डिस्टेंस सात समुंदर पार हो सकता है, लेकिन उनकी डिप्लोमेटिक रिलेशनशिप बहुत ही करीब है। आई हैव विथ मी द ऑनरेबल एम्बेसडर ऑफ अर्जेंटीना, हिज एक्सेलेंसी Mr. Daniel Chuburu. So in Hindi I said, India and Argentina, there is a phrase in Hindi which says, India and Argentina are oceans apart, but the diplomatic relationship between the two countries and the tie-up between the two countries is very strong. I think we should begin by talking, and at the first I should compliment you and congratulate you for the Argentina Day, which is just around the corner.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity of talking to your audience. Let me start by saying that we might be oceans apart geographically, but in terms of closeness, we are very close between India and Argentina, and we have been like that for many, many years. Political relation between the two countries is very important and it's very high. And it's very long because you have to take into account that despite this year we are celebrating the 70th anniversary of the diplomatic relationship, our first consulate in India was established in 1920 in Kolkata. So since that time we have some official relationship. Even the first office, commercial trade office that was opened by India was done in 1943 in Buenos Aires. So we have had that kind of relationship even between the independence of India, the formal independence of India, but with India as such. Since we established diplomatic relationships 70 years ago, we established embassies both in Buenos Aires and in New Delhi, and we have developed a very tight political relationship. Both of us share a lot of common values, and in the international arena, we have together defended those principles. The principles of democracy, the principles of the rule of law, the principles of multilateralism as a value for developing countries like we are, and a lot more that I will not take your time now to enumerate. But yes, let me tell you that in the multilateral arena, we have worked diplomatically together for many years, defending the cause of the developing countries. We started with the non-aligned movement. We kept on going with the G77, with the South-South cooperation, and with a lot of different instances in which the relationship North-South was being dealt with. And lately, we have both of our countries also share the G20. So even with the evolution that the things have had, we have kept on working a lot together. Unfortunately, the commercial relationship between the two countries is not up to the point we believe it deserves. So we are trying all our efforts to increase, in a win-win situation, the trade between India and Argentina in different fields, through different mechanisms, but we are firm believers that we have to enter in a new phase of our relationship. When President Macri came here in last February, we signed an agreement to establish a strategic partnership between the two countries. And I believe that that's the key word. The key word is partnership. we have to get into an instance in which we work as partners in different fields with a strategic view. That it's not just the relationship between a seller and a buyer. It's a relationship that goes much more to the strategic vision of both the countries. In this regard, we are now working in different areas. One of them is the question of agriculture, in which we want to be seen as a partner in the aim of the government of India to develop food security. Same goes in the direction of energy, in which also there is an objective of India to establish self, to be self-sufficient in terms of energy. That implies a big change of classic uh, energy, or say fossil energy, to new energies, new and renewable energies. And in this regard, we have to recognize that India has done a lot of work, and we are looking at the developments in India, particularly in the field of solar energy, with great enthusiasm. And we believe that there we can establish also a very good partnership. Argentina is one of the largest reserves in the world of lithium. So there, as it comes to the table, the question of lithium, there are a lot of issues in which we can really work as partners and help out the objectives of India, of course, helping our objectives too. So this is the way in which we are working. You mentioned the Argentine Day. Well, this is not the national day, because now our national day is in May, 25th of May, and we'll be celebrating it this year again on that day. But it's a way of trying to present to importers and a few wholesale consumers of products different things that we can produce in Argentina and that for the time being are not in the market. So it's just a day that we take 50, 60, 70 people coming from importers, buyers, distributors, and so that can see a little bit of a vision of Argentina that includes the products that we want to export to India, products that we think that we can work together, a little bit of our culture, a little bit of the possibilities in tourism. So we are going to be showcasing the country just for a couple of hours, and that we have called the Argentine Day. So as you may see, we are trying to work in very many different areas, including areas such as South-South cooperation, that we share their common values with India, and we have worked together in what is called the Buenos Aires Plan of Action, and the meeting that took place this year, which was the Buenos Aires Plan of Action plus 40, in which we have been taking stock on how South-South cooperation develops. We have also been working together in areas as the G20, in which in 1917 we hold the presidency of the G20. So
2017.
I say 1917. No, that was a little late, a little long ago. That was on 20. So in that regard also we had a lot of discussions because we were very interested as presidency of the G20 on having on board all the requests and the ideas that were coming from India as one of the main countries within the developing world. So, and of course one of the most important emerging economies nowadays, so it was very important for us to to work together with India in this regard. And last but not least, we are nowadays working together also in the COP25 that it's taking place in Madrid, in which, well, it takes place in Madrid because unfortunately, due to some unrest in Chile, they were not able to have that meeting there, so it was shifted to Madrid at the last minute. And all of us are working there with the vision that we need advances in the field of climate change. The Secretary General of the UN was very strong in his speech at the beginning of that meeting a couple of days ago, and that gives us and puts us in a situation in which all of us have to make as much as we can in the effort of getting solutions to the situation of climate change, particularly taking into account that the most affected people by climate change are the most vulnerable groups in societies and the most vulnerable countries. So this is an effort that not only we have to do it for ourselves, but particularly for those that are the ones that are going to be most suffering out of this situation.
2, 3 questions that comes. One is that India and Argentina are both developing countries and have a very good middle class to cater to, both aspiring society and aspiring class. And both the countries have a very big, vast ocean to tap to. Do you think that India and Argentina can also work on ocean and fisheries and around that area, though you have said that we have strategic partnership with India, and I'm told that India and the External Affairs Department, there is a very dedicated team for Latin America, and particularly to work closely with Argentine government, your government, country's government there.
Look, I believe that what now is being called the blue economy is particularly very interesting, and it's a field in which we can easily develop cooperation. Argentina is not a big consumer of fish, although we have 5,000 kilometers of coast. So that gives you an idea of how related we are to the sea and to the fisheries. For particular and cultural reasons, we are not that much of fish eaters, but we are very well trained in that field, and we have a very good work being done in that field, not only in biological but in technological approaches to oceans and fisheries. So of course we are very much willing to work together. There are some new agreements that we've been discussing very recently on how we can establish that cooperation. We know that this is a very important field for India, and we are willing to put together all we can in that regard.
Excellency, 2 important high-level Indian-Argentine political heads of the nations came together when in 2017, and then again only recently when the Argentine president was in India and you were at the helm of affair at the embassy here. These two have given flip to the better understanding among the diplomatic circle between the two countries. What you take it further by saying that the strategic relations are getting stronger, but also you as an individual are also working very closely with the cultural aspect of it, whether it is bringing Bollywood to your country for filming or tourism to your country. We know that Argentina is apart from football, is a very big host of, a very good host as a tourist destination for Indians. That could be a good way to begin one-to-one relationship between the communities of the two countries, bringing them together.
Well, I'll go back to the relationship between your Prime Minister and our President. In 2017, it was decided that Argentina, in a meeting that took place here in India, that Argentina will hold the presidency of the G20. The year of the exercise of the presidency was last year, 2018. In the context of different meetings, Modi and Macri met 5 times. Then it was the visit of Argentina, of the president of Argentina to India last February. So they have developed a very good empathy among themselves. And really it's interesting how they have been able to manage that relationship. That helped a lot in terms of getting into that new step that we are trying to develop, which is the strategic partnership. Strategic partnership helps all of us to think in areas in which till now we have not been thinking. For example, let me give you examples in questions of possibilities of sharing very high technologies in sensible areas. For example, in the nuclear field. For example, in the Pacific use of outer space, or radars, or fisheries, or areas in which till now we have not been thinking, and that will give us more of a flavor of a partner than, as I said before, just a buyer and a seller. So we are very, very enthusiastic in that all this relationship that has been developed in our countries in the last years will keep on moving and will be very important for both of us despite the distance. But there are some other things that you have to take into account on top of that, and that is the values, the common social values that we have between the two countries, like the respect that we have for family, like the approach that we have for friendship in Argentina, which are very, very important values for Indian society and that we share absolutely. And in that case, we have to build up from that platform into cultural affairs, into sport affairs, and as you said, Argentina is not only football. Argentina is something more, but also we have to develop our relationship in football. So we have to go for a more holistic approach in the relationship, and we are very, very, very convinced that that approach will take us to this win-win situation in which we finally will be benefiting the people of our two countries.
Let me put a question this way, that in next 4 to 6 quarters or next 8 quarters, what will be ambassador of Argentina's key pointers to bring Argentina and India together? I know you have day-to-day very hectic life, but what are your key specific points that you want to highlight?
Well, thank you so much. I believe that during our talk, I have mentioned a few areas in which I am trying to concentrate my work. One is agriculture, the other one is energy, and the third one is high technologies. What we are trying to do is settle the basis of a true and strong partnership between the two countries. In the field of agriculture, just to go on with our vision of that partnership, we have established an agricultural attaché in India, which is helping us here in the embassy. That is to be able to concentrate a lot in what we call this agricultural cooperation and the possibility that area brings to us. Why that? Because we believe that we are a country of 45 million people producing food for almost 500 million people. which shows you the idea of the importance of agriculture for Argentina, and which shows you the capacity that Argentina has developing technologies, not only machinery, but technologies in different areas so as to achieve that result. We think that we have been able to develop biotechnologies, that we have been able to develop technologies of production, that we have been developed technologies on very many fields related to these that we are willing to share with India. India is a country that needs to increase their production of food. It's not that you don't have, you are first producers of a lot of products, you are first exporters of a lot of products, you are first importers, and the question is that the magnitudes in India are so big that even with this phenomenon that you mentioned of the middle classes, you need to keep on growing on your production. And we think that we can help out in the question of productivity on one side, which will help to increase that production within the available resources, because there is a limit for the resources. You cannot have more land to plant, you cannot have more water than what you have. So in terms of the resources that you have, you need to increase productivity to increase the final production of the country. And the other important field is the management, the post-crop management. This is how you store your production. In India, due to climatic circumstances and all, almost 30% of the production is lost every year. So there are also technologies that we think we can have, or that we can develop together in order to increase that capacity of India to store the crops, and that will increase the availability of products in the market within the same production that you have. So those are the two main areas. If you go to other fields, and you can go in every field, we think that in the case of energy, we have a lot to exchange. You have a great technology concerning solar. We have the lithium, as I told you before. You are planning to have 30% of the EV, of the cars being EV in the short run. That will require some elements like batteries. For the batteries you need lithium, and so there is something that we can go together, and we will also need to learn from India all the technologies that you have in terms of solar energy. There is already a company working in Argentina, in the west of Argentina, in that field, and I believe that soon we'll have more of them. We also have nowadays the second largest reserve of shale gas, out of what you can produce LNG. And LNG will be needed in India for the development of the energy plan that the government has, and to change that matrix in which now, the matrix that you have now, to increase the renewable sources. Well, LNG is one important element. So if you go in each area, you have a lot of things. So what I'm trying to do, and my aim will be in the next weeks or months or years or semesters that are coming, is just to go in this direction. We have very clear the areas in which we are working, as I've been mentioning. What we want is to give steps in each and every area of this list that we have, supported by, as you rightly said, cultural events, because you need the people to know more about Argentina. Because at the time you're gonna choose a product, if you know the country that it's behind that, it's much more easy than if you don't know. And the only way to do that is to increase cooperation and cultural activities. So we are pushing the cart in that direction.
Excellency, you touched upon your deliberations on the COP25, which is presently on. Both India and Argentina have aspiring middle class who wants better living standard, but at the same time they want first to fill their coffers for their earnings, and both India and Argentina will find it difficult to be segregated in the COP25, where multilateralism come, where a lot of developed countries are not ready to transfer the technology. There is no climate fund. There is a need for climate fund. Where do you think that India and Argentina can maintain their individual standard or individual expectations for the countries and work as a group as well for the developing world and lead the developing world nations to negotiate and to get the best out of the developing world in terms of climate fund, in terms of a transfer of technology, though our people are as aspirational as anywhere else between the two countries and the rest of the world?
Well, let me tell you that despite different views that India and Argentina might have on the question of responsibility for the situation that we have, or who has to take care of that, and which are really just very specific issues within the conversations, I think that we will have to work together in one common aim, which is we need to fulfill the needs of developing countries for the transfer of technology that will help us reach the objectives that we have in terms of climate change and in terms of the measures that we have announced that we will take. Of course, that the position that has been taken by some or a few developed countries in terms of quitting the agreement, the Paris Agreement, or not fulfilling their obligations, I believe that what we have to do, and that's diplomacy, we have to talk about that. And we have to keep on talking, because the only possibility is reaching an agreement. If you look backwards a little bit, you'll see that some years ago, even there was a discussion on the technical aspects and on the scientific evidence of climate change. I believe that all that scientific evidence now is being shown every day. So you go, oceans are rising, glaciers are melting, storms everywhere, places where you had droughts, now you have floods. You go from a flood to a drought in 2 minutes. So those are very empirical evidences of the effects that climate change is having in our common world. And we have only one, which all of us share. The day we ruin this one, we'll have to go to Mars, as there are no possibilities for the time being. What we have to do is take care of this one here that we have. And for that, the only way is just not only looking at the different measures that you have to take, and I believe that people are getting to understand which are the different measures that you can take, how you can accomplish that, how you can shift from one type of energy to another type of energy, how to do a lot of things. But what now needs to be understood, and this is part of our work ahead, is to convince all of our partners that we need to do an effort to finance this way out. if there is no financing for this way out, there are countries that will not be able to achieve, although the effort that you do. So whatever effort that can be done has to be done, but this have to be reinforced with the financial needs that some developing countries might have more than developed countries to reach their objectives.
Excellency, if media reports are to be believed, US President Donald Trump is not coming to Madrid. On the other hand, Chile being close to your country in the Latin America, would your president exert some influence on the Chile presidency, which is hosting the COP25, though in Madrid? Do you see the fossil fuel has been a matter of concern about the USA? Your country also has a deep deposit of fossil fuel. India is also trying to reduce coal, but it cannot reduce coal consumption all of a sudden. That will be knee-jerk reaction. Where do you see the commerce and the livelihood and the life at stake? All these three are so entwined that a common solution needs to be sought out.
Well, you came to the conclusion that I have just said. We need a common position in this. We need a common understanding. Of course, that behind all this discussion, it's a question of numbers. It's a mathematical question of prices, dividends, costs, and how you get that money for the...
Excellency, I may like to interrupt you by saying that also the numbers are developing worlds are bigger in numbers in that in voting sense.
But look, this is not a question, and unfortunately I will not share your view. This is not a question of voting, because we might all vote, but if the ones that have to put the money don't put the money, it's useless just telling them, look, we voted this and that. That's why I think that we have to work all together so as to get a common agreement between all of us, so everyone will be fulfilling their obligations. There is not such as a police force at the global level that can help implement the decisions that are taken by the international community. Except if you go to Chapter 7 of the UN, but you're talking very specific questions. But in general terms, what you don't have is that policy capability of the multilateral system to implement their measures. So we have to work on a common project for all of us that can be not only reached, but that can be fulfilled.
Excellency, we have been talking about the foreign relations and the international relationship. There is one point of contention that we all have been talking about for the last few years, about the recession and the Chinese-driven recession or US-driven recession. What is your viewpoint, what is your country's viewpoint on that? About two blocks on commerce, they are just not ready to buzz and they are not ready to give an inch to the other party.
Well, this is something that it's affecting all of us. Because even if you talk about a trade war between US and China, and we are finally oceans apart, as you mentioned before, we're suffering the consequences. So nothing here comes for free. In this war, we are also being affected. So what we have to work is to get the necessary measures so all of us can live in this world that we have. And for that, we have to build an effort in all together build a set of principles and laws that guarantee that every country has a fair retribution for what they do. So if you are talking about trade, we are the first ones to say that we want to live in a law-guided world. But once we have that, we have to respect it. So all of our efforts have to be to adapt and adapt and adapt and readapt the different norms so all of us can fit within those norms and we can keep on trading. There is nothing like that for the time being we've been able to develop to get rid of trade. So for the time being we have to establish the norms that let us trade in a peaceful manner and let all of us have the benefits of trade and all of us have the possibility of taking those benefits to our people.
At last, Excellency, if I may ask you, what are the 5 points that you would like to sell to the Indians, because this is an Indian television, that they should come to Argentina and enjoy their life, do business with your country, do their tourism, enjoy the place, and of course, we all relish your football.
Well, I will sign on your 5 points. I think that they reflect exactly what we need. I think that India and Argentina are two countries. One is the 7th largest country of the world. The other is the 8th largest country of the world. You know that India has 1.4 billion people. We have 45 million people. So there are a lot of things that we can complement one to the other that we have to keep on working together. The other thing is the question of tourism, and I will tell you, I will back a little bit to the cultural question that you mentioned. Argentina is a country that since long time ago is fascinated with the Indian spirituality. And in this regard, you can see that in Argentina nowadays you find more, with 45 million people, you find more than 500 yoga centers in Buenos Aires. Mostly of the tourism that comes from Argentina to India, it's spiritually related. So people come here to see the ashrams, to have their gurus, and that's the kind of admiration that we have for the Indian culture. So there is a lot to be done, and a lot maybe that people have to know. You know how many Indians go to Antarctica every year? A lot, much more than you expect. Because there are possibilities of seeing in Argentina things that you don't see usually in the type of tourism that you do. You know, a country of our size with our nature there is virgin in a lot of places. So there are that sensation that you have when you come to India, that in every meter there is one Indian standing. Well, you don't have it there because this difference in the quantity of inhabitants. We are a diverse country, as India is. Maybe our diversity is different than the Indian diversity, but anyhow we are used to diversity. Religious diversity, origin diversity, and a lot of language diversity. You have, although in Argentina the main difference with India is that we have only one language. All of us speak Spanish. You might have the ones that depending on their origin, they talk whatever language in the world. It's not like the case of India that you have every 200 kilometers a change in language, a change in tribes, or a change in food habits, of course. It's not that kind of diversity, but you have to take into account that all of our population, except for a very minor part of it, it's not indigenous, it's imported from somewhere.
Excellency, before I sign off, do you play cricket?
No, I don't play cricket, but I can tell you that I watch cricket in TV a lot.
But my next following question will be: we envy your football. How can we become a good footballing nation? Can you be the guide to millions of Indian football fans who want to emulate Argentina and come up the ranks? What will be your mantra on that?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that in terms of Argentina, it's a very sportive country. It's not only football. In general terms, all of us are very close to one sport, doesn't matter what. And we have been able to develop a very good standard in terms not only of football, but of basketball, handball, hockey, and many others. We don't play cricket, and the ones that play cricket are awful. So don't, cricket is not our sport. So that's the first base. The second thing is that what happens in Argentina is what happens in India in terms of cricket. For us, football is what cricket is for you. The guy, every guy, since he's can walk, instead of getting a cricket ball or a cricket glove, what they're gonna be doing is just kicking a ball. That's the way, because you go here in Delhi or around India, and in every 2 meters you have kids playing cricket. Well, the same you find in Argentina, but playing football. So it's part of that development. Anyhow, we are trying to also work out a solution with India, not a solution, a way in which we will very much like to have India very soon in the World Cups. So we have to develop that. Nowadays there are 2 Argentinian players in the I-League, so we're trying to get through players, coaches, and other fields that interaction with the Indian football players. And we think that it's a question of time, and it's a question of a wish of India to develop the sport, because you have to settle the possibilities for the guys to play. And in this regard, of course, this also goes to part of the diversity of India. There are areas in India in which football is very much developed than in other areas of India, because there are more proximity to that sport. In Bengal, in Tamil Nadu, in Kerala, there are a lot of fans of football. There are pockets in which, well, those pockets are the ones that have to transpire. And of course, there is an institutional development that has to be associated to that, because the confusion that it might come from the different leagues that are in India also don't help for the development of the sport. We need to have, you need to have, or we need to have, all of us, clubs in India, and not only franchise. Franchise, it's just for the sake of the professional sport, but you have to develop clubs in where the kids can go, in which you can contain those kids, in which you can help them develop, and that's the way that finally one day you will come to have a very good football in India, which will happen. Anyhow, that will happen. It's a question of time.
You said it very rightly that sporting culture is very important, and our Prime Minister has taken a lead in his second term about Fit India and Stand Up India, and our Sports Ministry Minister himself, Kiran Rijiju, and his team at Sports Authority of India are working on Fit India and Stand Up India. Do you think, do you endorse these schemes of the government related with the head of the nation taking interest in Stand Up India, Fit India, Healthy India? And do you think that that will be a good beginning for sporting nation as big as India that could emerge?
Look, I think that the main objective of these policies is much more related to health issues than to sport issues. The question is how you can manage to put them together. And it's not only that you need a guy to be fit for the purpose of having a better health and the influence that that can have in the whole health system, but how do you relate that fitness to the sport? And then, of course, the idea of that for a sport you need to be fit is the one that you have to twist with the other idea of health and fitness. If you go that way and you give the kids the possibility of learning, of developing their sport, that's great. The other factor that you have to take into account is the weather limitations that you might have in some of these areas. Of course, that with the air quality that we are having in Delhi now, it's very difficult to develop a sport like football where you play outdoors. And so I believe that there is an holistic approach that has to be taken so as to develop the sport itself.
If I may ask a small question, that would you be interested to, if given a chance or if requested, to sit with the sports minister of India and give idea about how bringing sports as a community feeling or as a community development project that can also turn into Olympians and turn into international sports persons?
Well, let me tell you that I'm not here to give any kind of lesson to anyone. Or,
Share your
to-
experience, share your knowledge.
That's a different thing, and if it's a question of sharing experience, I'm open to share experience with not only the Minister of Sport, with everyone that wants to know about what we do or what we see of one in these areas. I think that the Minister of Sport is a guy that is prepared to do this, and he's got a team, he's got a whole ministry with him that can look not only on what we do, but what a lot of countries do. The way that, you see, I used to serve in the US, and the development of football in the US, or soccer as they call it, is something that you have to pay some attention.
And it happened within 2 decades or 1.5 decades.
In 2 decades, the guys are playing football. You may say that they are better or worse, but it doesn't matter. They play a little better or a little worse. It is not the point. But what they did was to analyze the culture of the country and how to insert that football in that culture. It's not that you have to follow the same system, because for me one of the main things that they did to develop football was to put it as a university sport, so you can get your scholarships out of football also, that before it was only restricted to other sports. And that helped a lot some universities to develop that football basis. And once you have that football basis, then you go into a model of professional football. That's one way. You don't have here the same mechanisms, so you have to think in the mechanisms that you need as India, and with the background of the Indian culture, on how to do it. And that may be related to the possibility of having the kids, giving them a ball, and ask them to just kick the whole day the ball. So it's something that you have to, although you can, anyone can share experiences with India, you have to know your own country. That's why I think that the Minister of Sports with his team, they will be very much able to get their own experience, putting together the experiences of different countries in the world, and develop the sport in India.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your time, and taking wide range of questions from diplomacy to nuclear to sports to culture to Bollywood and adventure tourism. You have been very kind to us for the interview, and I hope both India and Argentina will find more common ground, because they have a lot more in common than they think they are.
No, it's up to me to thank you for the possibility of sharing all these comments with you and with your audience. So I'm very happy that this happened, and I'm always at your disposal.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
No, thank you.
Download Tarang online radio app from Google Play Store.
You are listening to Tarang Devotional Online Radio.